All right, well, let's talk about those Vikings, shall we? PFF released their way too early 22-man starting projections. Reggie loves this already. And to be honest, nothing too shocking. I mean, pretty chalk as expected when it comes to the starters. Ed Ingram was penciled in as right guard, and PFF also had Andrew Booth Jr. beating out Chandon Sullivan for the nickel position. Now, the secondary and guard spot, it's going to be a wait-and-see approach. A lot of moving parts in place right now, but I don't know. Anything stick out to you in PFF's latest projection? To be honest, if I was going to put my money down right now, I think it just feels like one of those vets as your starter at right guard week one, not Ed Ingram personally.
Yeah, I think that was probably like my only qualm, if I had a qualm about it,
Mm-hmm.
because like you said, it really is just kind of chalk. You got, Daniil Hunter on the edge, za'darius Smith on the other edge, Kendricks and Hicks on the inside, which I think is going to be really, really strong for them in this 3-4 system. But, you start Andrew Booth Jr., you got Chandon Sullivan there. It looks like they got Lewis Seen beating out Cam Bynum for the other safety spot. I think that it's going to be interesting to see how they kind of implore this lineup on the defensive back end. I don't know. I find it interesting. I think it's going to be. I think it's going to be one of those things where they find a way to get Cam Bynum involved more often as well. Like it's funny. Like this was supposed to be like his year to shine. He flashed in a couple games last year, filling in for Harry, and this was supposed to be his year to shine. And then they drafted Lewis Seen in the first round. He's probably like, wait a minute,
Poor guy.
what about me? What didn't I show a little? Didn't I show a little something? And I think what's interesting is, PFF, they not with Cam Bynum shooting in the gym, but I'm interested to see how these position battles play out in training camp.
Three safety looks. That's what I'm banging the table for. Three safety look. The best coaches in the NFL, we talked about it yesterday, find a way to maximize their players' talents. And I think Cam Bynum, what he showed last year, mixed in with the rookie Lewis Seen, we know his high-end potential, and then obviously Harrison Smith. I think you find a way, and I think you might see a lot of three safety looks this year. It's nice because you don't have to rush back Andrew Booth Jr. from this injury. Another reason I don't think he starts out the gate. I think you slowly mix him in weeks 2, 3, 4, and 5 and just kind of see what you get from him from a small sample size. And don't forget, they didn't break the bank paying Chandon Sullivan by any means, but I mean, they paid him enough for me to say they certainly have high expectations for him to be the starter in the nickel, at least right away. And the nickel position is a tough position in the NFL. I don't think it gets talked about enough how difficult it is to match up with so many different receivers on the inside with very little help. So I think you go with a proven vet like Chandon Sullivan and start to mix in Andrew Booth Jr. But yeah, finding a way to get Cam Bynum and those three safeties on the field at the same time. Remember, Cam Bynum even played cornerback at Cal. So there's a way to mix and match him. Ed Donatell's going to have his hands full. He's going to have to sprinkle in a lot of different wrinkles and different looks, but he's got a lot of talent to use and a lot of versatility to choose from. The other position that I'm just wondering here in the back of my mind is that third defensive line position as well. We talked about that a little bit earlier in the week. Armon Watts seems to be the guy right now, but James Lynch, again, a true 5-tech at Baylor, flashed quite a bit for me. And then even Kenny Willekes from Michigan State. There's a little quiet position battle, I think, going on in the background that not a lot of people are talking about. Armon Watts certainly has proven that he should be the guy right out the gate, but I think that's a heavy rotation that we see. And who knows what Ed Donatel runs? Maybe he runs, 3-4 base, but maybe he runs a 2-4 or 4-2, which just means maybe only 2 defensive linemen at times. Maybe sometimes it's 4 defensive linemen. So a lot of different wrinkles, a lot of different looks. Plenty of time to break all that down. Rest assured, it's going to be a long off season. Don't worry. All right. I hate to do this, Reggie. I really do. I can't stand this back and forth. Kirk Cousins on Twitter, constant and absolutely exhausting talk all the time. Is he a top 10 quarterback in the league or is he not? But I guess that's just where we're at today in the offseason, because our very own Lockdown Minnesota's Ron Johnson, he started some good, healthy, heated debate on Twitter yesterday and posed the question, is Kirk Cousins a top 10 quarterback in the NFL? Even Shannon Sharp got into the action and ripped off 10 quarterbacks he'd choose over Kirk. Reggie, where do you stand on all this? We've never really discussed this often, talked about topic in depth yet here on the show. I'm curious what your opinion is on Kirk Cousins and where he ranks as a starting quarterback in the NFL in your eyes.
You know, this is an interesting topic because Kirk Cousins is a very polarizing subject and quarterback. And I think Kirk Cousins, and I said something like this on Twitter and the people came after me. I think I said Kirk was an above average quarterback. I don't think he's like an elite guy, like a guy that you're going to put the ball in his hands and he's going to go win you a football game. He has some capabilities. That game against Carolina sticks out in overtime. Threw a dart, like threw an absolute dream of a throw to KJ Osborne for the walk-off touchdown. And so Kirk has ability, but we haven't seen it often utilized to its potential at times. Like there have been times where, I think back to the Cleveland Browns game. I think back to the Dallas Cowboys game where he just really, and some people may say, well, the coaching staff didn't put him in good enough position to succeed. The best quarterbacks thrive in spite of the coaching staff. And you look at guys like Joe Burrow, you look at guys like Brady, Rodgers, back when Breeze played, didn't matter what the coaching was or if it was great or not, they were going to go and make a play when they needed it to be done. And sometimes you just don't see that from Kirk. And, there's a lot to be said about his primetime performances, but I started looking at some of these people's lists, right? And I don't know. When you put a list together and you put Derek Carr as a top 10 quarterback, and I believe Derek Carr is a fine quarterback. He's good. But I also kind of put him in that same tier of being above average. And if you're asking me for my money, who I take between Carr and Cousins, I think I lean more Cousins. And so I don't know. It's so interesting seeing all these people, put together their top list, because I think once you get like past like top seven, I think it's just kind of whoever you want after that point. So if you're going those last three spots being up for grabs in that top 10, I would put Cousins in there.
Yeah, you got your elite. Kirk Cousins, no, I don't think many, I hope not, people are arguing Kirk Cousins is elite. He's not in that top 6, top 7. But he's definitely in that second tier, no doubt. I mean, everybody flings out the stats. Top 10 in passing yards, top 10 in TDs, top 5 in interceptions, top 5 in passer ratings. Stats don't lie, I get it. But what's misconceiving about Kirk, and you talked about it, and what a lot of people will bring to the table is his overall record. Yeah. I mean, QB wins. Is it a stat? People talk about that on Twitter all the time. 59, 59, and 2. I mean, exactly 500 to a T. It cannot get more middle of the road than that. He wins as many as he loses. And when the lights are the brightest, as you mentioned, Reggie, and the big stages there and primetime games, those records crumble, man. And I think that's what fans need to see from Kirk to cement him in that top 10 discussion is not only win some big time games, but show up in some big pressure spots in the game. Lead his team back from big deficits. You talked about the Carolina game. Great game. How about the Denver Bronco game 2 years ago, down 20 zip at halftime? Kirk rallies him back. Okay, so there's a couple there on his resume, but rally his offense on more game-winning drives week in and week out. Show that it factor that a lot of these other top quarterbacks have shown. And while he's certainly done that from time to time and shown he's capable of doing it, he hasn't done it at a consistent level, and the record shows that. And you could argue, well, he spent the first 4 years in Washington. So when you look at his overall career record, I mean, he wasn't surrounded by a great cast there for 4 of those years, but he just doesn't strike that fear in a defense in those final 2 minutes of a game. And I think that's what fans who say he's not a top 10 guy will always point back to until proven otherwise. Not just the stats. Those are nice for sure. And that's what keeps him in that top 10 discussion. But I don't think he's in that elite category. And I don't think many other people would argue.